topic right up front. So
Okay.
this is kind of crazy. Citigroup, which is the third largest bank in the US, accidentally credited $81 trillion to one of their clients' account.
No way.
Instead of the intended, guess how much they intended?
It,
$280 last April.
what? Wow.
Um, yeah. So the funny thing is that the error happened and it took 90 minutes before somebody noticed it. So
Wow.
it's kind of amazing that these kind of errors can still happen in banks because at the end of the day, like people don't realize this, but a bank, what it is at its core is it's basically just a ledger. It's just entries in a think of like a ledger book or think of like a lined notebook. Each line represents a ledger entry, and that ledger entry can either be a credit or a debit. And that basically means it's either money going in or money going out of the bank. And then in each of those ledger, like basically you have this ledger, right? And then each account at the bank is kind of like you can think of like it has its own sub ledger of credits and debits, but really what's happening is every single entry in a bank, a withdrawal or a deposit, every single one of those things is recorded on the bank's general ledger, this massive ledger which contains all of your deposits, my deposits, their deposits, every account's deposits. And then your account is basically just withdrawals and deposits are specifically yours. So it's funny, but yeah, banks can just make this issue. Like they can just accidentally inject $81 trillion into the money supply unless somebody notices. So
Wow.
I just think that's kind of wild that we kind of base our trust in a small way on banks just doing their job correctly. Now there is one protective mechanism. Do you know what that is? Before, like, if I owned my own bank and I just said, oh, actually, I'm just going to say that Alex has $50 million. Do you know what one protective mechanism is that protects against this?
No. What is it?
Every bank and credit union in the United States has what's called a master account with the Federal Reserve Bank. And the Federal Reserve Bank, all of its members, basically all of the customers of the Federal Reserve Bank are what? Other banks and credit unions. So we all have our own accounts at banks and credit unions, and then banks and credit unions have an account at the Federal Reserve Bank. So the Federal Reserve Bank, if I'm, let's just say I'm, Christian Trummer Bank, and I just inject $50 million into the money supply by entering, I'm just going to say one of my customers has $50 million in their account. Well, at the end of the day, the Federal Reserve um, sends to each bank and receives from each bank essentially like it's like a settlement file. It's like a reconciliation file. So if I just randomly added $50 million to the money supply, the Federal Reserve Bank would know about it, and they would be able to say, "There's something wrong. This doesn't balance up with what you had yesterday and what came into your bank account today." So there is a protective mechanism there.
Wow. Interesting.